Welcome to Warfighter Sanctuary. Here we talk with local veteran business owners, their military journey, civilian life, their business, and the services they offer.
I am the soldier's lost voice. Come on!
Lock it in and listen up. Here's your host, Andre Rivera.
Is this what they want?
Welcome to the Warfighter Sanctuary podcast. I'm your host, Andre Rivera, and today we have Teddy Pernal with us. Teddy, tell us a little bit about your businesses and what you're doing today.
So business-wise, I've got three organizations. One, we focus on manufacturing and training for the United States military. That one's called Tactical Revolution. Really focus on the ballistic armor industry, shields, that kind of stuff. The other two businesses, one is Brand Group. That one, we specialize in staffing and mainly hiring veterans, but supporting law enforcement as well. And we've got some interesting activities going on there. The third one is Shadow Defense, and that's more of a foundational style business where we seek to help not just veterans, but first responders, military, male, female, doesn't matter, really trying to help make a difference in the world, because none of us got to any level of success without someone giving a helping hand, so it's our way of giving back. I came upon that business, I came a part of that organization when I was moving out of government contracting work myself, so I was a contractor, and I wanted to get back to South Florida, and just through mutual friends in the network, I had multiple interviews, and then they brought me on the team. Once they brought me on the team, I was like, oh, this is great. We're able to make a direct impact in very unique applications, and our niche was supporting military exercises through government contracts, and then also getting ballistic shields in the hands of people who needed them, that need that level of protection. So that business, I've been with them for years now, 5 years going on, and it's been great. It's been a great ride. It's tough, right? A lot of 2 a.m., 3 a.m. proposals, but it's good. It's good work. It's honest work.
And how do you get into that? How did you find that in the first place?
I ask myself that question every day. That one, I go, I got lucky. I'm blessed. That's how I'll say that, really. But anyone who knows me knows I put my left foot in front of my right, and I work hard. I'm not manipulative. I'm not sneaky. I don't lie for a living. So therefore, I think the hard work and honesty ethic is what really landed me there, because it was, again, friend of a friend of a friend type of thing. And
was it a friend through the military?
Yeah, it was a former major that I served with in the Marines. He was one of my platoon commanders once upon a time. He was a pilot, good dude. For a pilot, nah, but he was a good dude all around. I still talk to him all the time. And so I got that job.
It's through a military network, and that's key.
Yes.
It's so important.
Yeah. Without us having served together, without him knowing my work ethic, I never would have gotten the first, Starbucks interview. Exactly.
And that's what we're trying to exploit here with the podcast and with the nonprofit, is to exploit that.
Yeah.
With intention,
Yeah. And then the second business we founded was specifically to help out one guy, and Brand Group was the name of that business, and it was to help out a guy who the business is named after. And it was a guy who was going through a rough spot in his life.
You say a guy, but a veteran?
Yeah, Marine veteran.
Survived
a broken back in a Hearstmaster accident.
Wow.
In Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Then survived a very traumatic half-a-year coma experience after he was out of the military.
How did that happen?
So there was probably a lot of contributing factors to that, but you can add depression, suicidal ideations.
He deployed?
Yeah, he deployed to Afghanistan. He was a prize service guy. He's one of those guys who did scout sniper, left, did the insurance world. We're in the Middle East, goes to come back in, joins ANGLICO as a fires guy, goes overseas, 2011-12 timeframe, and then comes back, like a lot of guys do, experience divorce, maybe drank a little too much. A lot of us, go down some deep paths with coming home from deployment sometimes. Nonetheless, that's not who he was. That wasn't his character. That was just his behavior. Great guy. And then got divorced. Then some other significant Marine Corps events happened involving a death of some Marines in a training accident. And then his new girlfriend at the time was related to those Marines. She was their mother. She ended up taking her life. And
And who were the Marines? The Marines were the sons?
Yeah. So the son of the woman he was dating, the two sons of the woman he was dating died in a mortar accident.
In the same accident?
Yep, same accident. Wow. So that was tough on her, and I can't imagine what she went through. So that just turned bad to worse for, this is, I'm summarizing, but this is many years.
But I want to hear this, because this is so important, Teddy, because this goes down to the root of everything we're trying to accomplish here. Because like I tell a lot of other nonprofits, we have the same commander's intent, we're just going about it a different way.
Yeah, exactly.
But exactly what you're trying to do is what I'm trying to do. We're trying to keep that guy alive. Like, what could we have done differently if we had a time machine and gone back? Like, having tribe, having purpose, having someone to call. That's what this is. Like I tell everyone, if you forget everything that I say here today, just remember what we're trying to build here is tribe and purpose, because those two things I think are more important than horseback lessons, surfing, or marching in panties and getting drunk.
Yeah.
I think that is so much more critical to save, to really mitigate the issues that are coming. And like, even in the beginning of this, you said you dedicated this to a guy, and I know you assume that everyone knows we're veterans, but sometimes no. That's why I said, was he a veteran? I know he's a veteran.
Yeah.
Exactly. We forget.
Yep.
Like, no, this is typical, and you're saying it like it's common. For civilians, it's not common. Like, oh yeah, it's common. You come back from deployment, divorce, drinking, all these things that you mentioned. That's a trend, man. We hear that all the time.
Yeah, I write a lot of it off as the normal playbook.
It isn't. For us, it's normalcy, unfortunately.
And it is unfortunate. Yeah. So we helped this Marine get this company started to do staffing and government contracting work, which is not as easy as it sounds. There's a lot of
not easy
keystroking at the keyboard to make that a reality. And it's not just start a business and go off and do it. It's start the business, maintain compliance. If you're lucky enough to win a few victories in the contracting world, then the admin homework gets longer and longer and longer. I mean, I compare it to almost writing a doctoral thesis, even though I've never haven't written one. I've read a few, and every thesis I've read is shorter than a government proposal.
And you're constantly being judged and reevaluated.
Oh,
yes, I remember
that.
Yep.
Yeah, because you the government's not obligated to. It's taxpayer money, so they're trying to do their due diligence. There's good, bad in every marketplace and industry, but it's taxpayers' money, and if your business model is to spend it the right way, then I think you'll be successful in the long run. So that was a good company that we helped start. It's still going now today. Still got active contracts right now. So that one's interesting. And I think we'll see some more blossoming out of that, because you get the service disabled veteran-owned small business certification by the SBA that gives you access to other small business opportunities that not every company can compete for, right? Like Northrop Grumman can never compete for that money. Now there's different shady ways to go about getting.
I was about to say that, because I worked in the contracting world for a decade.
There's different shady ways to go about that, but the spirit of why those programs exist still benefits the beneficiary that was designed for. So.
Exactly. And would it be a sub?
Yeah, there's the whole subprime contract thing. Which
I lived that world for a while.
That's a whole. You could do a week-long podcast on that. I wouldn't waste too much energy on it, because there's no right answer. There's just all the answers.
Exactly. So there's that one company, and then it's still going on, that company.
Yep. Yeah. So we're still going strong there.
Awesome.
We might do some infrastructure changes in the next year or two, but that's just to make it more competitive and more marketable. Because we started it off as like, hey, let's just do this thing, see if we can help this guy out. Because once he recovered from his coma, he couldn't physically do work anymore, and so we really wanted to help out, see if we could put some money in his pocket.
And how's he doing? What's going on?
He's doing great.
Okay.
He's also taking advantage of his benefits right now, so he's full-time in school. He's got a service dog, rides his bike every day. I mean, you wouldn't think the guy had been through hell and back.
But that's a success story.
Yeah. So I still see him. I just saw him last week.
Excellent.
It's not something that we just do fire and forget.
Yeah.
So
that's the other thing people forget about that. There's no solution in fire and forget. You got to keep nurturing and checking up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's more about the relationship.
The tribe.
The tribe, the relationship, the community, to build something successful and keep it there. It's easy to, like you mentioned, to go horseback riding for a weekend and help veterans out, and then guys have to go clock back into their miserable lives.
Yeah.
And I see that far too often, and so that's what prompted us also to start the next foundation.
Let's jump right into that. Yeah,
Shadow Defense. We did our first fundraiser finally to help out a cancer guy, which was not the original mission, but
cancer veteran.
Okay. An Army veteran with cancer, deployed to Afghanistan, was stationed in Korea. And Shadow Defense, we started the idea. I don't even want to call it a business. We started the idea after too many people around us were killing themselves, taking their lives, ruining their lives even before they killed themselves.
Yeah.
And so we had a call to action, and the call to action was, how do we help people in a more impactful way, long term? How do we help them fix their lives? Because I've been to so many of these retreats, even through my own traumatic journey, everything I've struggled with. You go, and that's great. We were out on the campfire telling war stories, drinking beer, shooting guns on the range, go jet skiing on a boat, whatever the case may be. Your kids enjoy it.
Great intention.
Sometimes they do help people, but I think more often than not, in my own personal observation, they do good for 2 or 3 days, and then, like I said, guys go back to their miserable lives. If you're having money problems, those retreats don't fix your money problems.
Exactly.
If you're having drinking problems, those retreats don't fix your drinking problems. And so, you know, we said, what's a successful model for helping people with these deep problems? And I say alcohol and money because that's usually the root of a lot of guys' problems. So we looked at
Dead on, man.
How do you help people with money problems? Well, there's gambling, but that's not what we were looking at. So we said, all right, money problems are too difficult to diagnose a standard recipe. What is a good standard recipe to solve? We said alcohol, there's AA. And so we said, what if we made a foundation like AA for veterans? And we're like, not just AA, but something that said, here's 12 steps. And we did it at the most fundamental level, is case management. That's what it really is. And it's like, hey, we're going to pick a guy or a girl. We're not going to go out and find them. We're going to let it organically happen. And it did. We're going to pick a guy or a girl organically, build a relationship with them. And, the original premise is, oh, you having money problems? Good. Give us the logins to your banks. We'll get an actual CFO, the treasurer of the board. We'll get real, intelligent, money, successful people to analyze things. Maybe you just need to sell your house. Solve all your problems. If I told you, in all your troubles, all you have to do is sell your house and buy a new one at a cheaper, downsize a little bit, and all your problems will go away, most people will say, yeah, let's do it. Can I stay in the same neighborhood, zip code, all that? Like, yeah, we'll add in all the variables, but we got to start somewhere. If you're having drinking problems, we'll do the same thing. Look how much money you're wasting on this. Like, we'll start somewhere. We'll follow 12 steps. I'm not going to say it's 12 steps. Everyone's different. But if we do it like case management, where we as a foundation put our hands on you and we don't let go of you until we take you through the journey to where you're like, all right, I'm ready to leave the nest. If we do it that way, that makes sense. And that's why the name of the company also, or the foundation, became Shadow Defense, right? We expect to be the defense for you in your own journey, but we also want to be in the shadows. We don't want to be up front. We don't want to be, look what we did this weekend for so-and-so. Yes, there's a certain amount of marketing that goes with any foundation so we can get the word out there and generate more energy and resources to help people. But that's not, the point of it is just that, to generate resources to help these veterans and first responders too. We're not going to restrict ourselves just to the veteran community, although, our current first guy is
And why would you say that? Why would you open up to the first responders? I mean, I know the answer. I think I know the answer, but I want you.
So the catalyst, and we spoke a little bit about this earlier before we started, the catalyst of the call to action was a firefighter actually killed himself in his backyard. And the firefighter was a brother, a Marine I served with, and my business partner was a firefighter who served with this guy. So it just made sense that we were already in this very small, tight-knit community. The guy killed himself for two reasons. One, he was having relationship problems, and those relationship problems caused him to lose his job at the fire department, and then that caused money problems. And so he never saw a way out.
And it's usually money problems at the end of it.
Yeah, I think no matter what the original,
because one affects the other.
Whatever the original Big Bang is, right? You could be relationship, it could be drinking, it could be drugs, it could be anything. It usually always comes back to money somehow. My observation.
Yes,
and again,
mine as well. Yeah.
I'm not trying to take the veteran 22 a day. I'm not trying to take that to zero. I'd love to, but I just want to make one impact. If I could help out 1/10 of a percentile point, then I think we're on to something better. I think too many failed attempts exist for trying to go from 22 to 0.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, because I feel that way too. For example, if we want to tackle the homeless problem, do we go out in the street and help all the homeless that are in the corner first, or do we help the veterans that are about to be homeless, but they're working, they want to work, they're just having a hard time finding work and finding that stability? I feel like that's the lower hanging fruit, and we can have impacts on target with that. We can have effects on target with that versus trying to do an unsustainable mission that may never come to realization.
Absolutely. I think part of what we talk about a lot, to summarize it, would be prevention is far better than a cure.
Exactly.
And if we're not trying to make your life easy, because I think Personally, we still believe you have to go through the fire to get to greatness. But if all you needed, there's some other good foundations I've worked with. If all you needed was $800 to pay your car bill and your insurance this month, and that would prevent you from the ripple effect of bad problems, then we're going to step in and do that. But I'm not going to go, let's just give you subsidized public welfare. We're not doing that.
That exacerbates the problem.
Exactly. So you can't, like you said, homeless, you can't just save all the homeless, but if we can help prevent homelessness, then we're onto something.
Exactly. We're on the same zone, brother.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're excited. We did our first event last night. It was...
How was that? Talk about that.
I was just about to. We're not going to follow the same recipe that people have because it hasn't worked to the effect that we want it to work, or we need it to work. I'll put it that way. So I'll say this. It is almost controversial when you say it out loud. We have an Army veteran who diagnosed with cancer, colon cancer, a few years back, and he's had more organs removed than I have kids.
Wow.
And
you have a lot of kids, Ted,
yeah.
For those that don't know.
It was amazing just seeing him walk around. And where would we hold such an event for a cancer patient, call it? We did it at a cigar lounge.
Which cigar lounge?
Sunset Cigar Lounge in Jupiter, Florida. Shout out to them. They're great people.
Shout out. That's what I wanted to shout out.
Yeah. He personally knew the owner, so it made sense. There was, again, it was community driven, tribal driven.
Now, is that a veteran owned cigar shop or no?
No.
And I want to bring that up too, because sometimes we get more support from civilians than we do from veterans. So
yeah, there was no.
We have to be open to them as well.
Yeah, they were not. There was another vendor who he set up a sunglass sales little display. He wasn't trying to overwhelm and make it flea market-ish, but he did a really good job. He was a retired lieutenant colonel, and he was like, "I want to help out, so I'll just donate everything."
Wow.
And so he did a great job.
We got such a great community.
Yeah, we had a great turnout. We raised thousands of dollars for this guy. The final numbers aren't in, so I won't give an exact number.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we broke 10K in a few hours for this guy at a very small lounge, no bigger than an apartment.
Wow.
And so the community really rallied. And it's not just, we raised money to help this guy. It was, we're now able to pull on strings of resources that he didn't know was available, or even the resources themselves didn't know the extent of what he wasn't getting. And, the particulars of that is we're going to connect him with the vet center. We're going to talk to the director of medicine at the VA hospital and make them more aware. We're giving light to an issue that may or may not have had the right traction it did before. Because the biggest struggle he's facing is the VA won't pay for his treatment.
Why not?
I made a speech about it last night. The first part of my speech was 8 minutes, and then we did a second speech when we presented our own foundation's contribution to him.
Well, feel free if you want. Take as much time
the
as you need.
speech I said, I like the second one better. The shorter version was, the VA told him he was terminal and there was no more treatment left. They cut out everything they could. They froze everything they could, and they said, that's all we got.
You gotta be kidding me. That's insane.
And then someone else off in the fringe said, well, there's alternative medicine. And he's got alternative medicine treatments, and the VA goes, yes, they are, and those work, but we can't pay for them. So now you've got the government bureaucracy in the way, and so
abysmal.
He started selling off a lot of stuff, and he was a successful businessman before and after his time in the Army. This guy joined the Army in his late 30s just to serve. He had a call to action himself for the country. Little did he know, after a few tours and overseas, he'd come back and get cancer and change his whole life. And he's got teenagers at home still. And so, the victim of his journey is not him as much more as it is his family and those around him. I mean, he had to sell off businesses. Did people lose their jobs because of this? And all because we couldn't navigate the red tape to get him the resources he needs. So that's part of why we're like, okay, well, we're not just going to restrict ourselves to people with a mental health challenge that is, can be attributed to causal factors of alcohol, money, drugs, whatever. We organically met this guy, and we're like, hey, all right, you're going to be our guy. We're going to help you. And it's not for us. I've had plenty of help in my life, and this is my way of being able to say, all right, I'm going to extend that hand backwards.
No one's coming to help us.
No.
There's no close air support for us, man.
No, there isn't. There's no, not on the battlefield of life.
Yep.
Not on the battlefield of life. And so we're going to continue to help him out. And I had a lot of people come up to us last night. Hey, what other events are you guys doing? Are you doing, can we help someone else? And I said, not right now. No. I'm like, why would we go help someone else? He's not done. We just did one little fundraiser. Maybe we got him a month of life support and treatment. Like, we're not going to turn our back on him now. And it really hit home with when people were asking me, many people, probably a dozen people last night said, hey, are you guys going to do any more events? We'd love to come support. I'm like, well, if we do, it's going to be for him. We're going to walk this journey with him. And if that takes forever, so be it. And if we got to build, so be it. You know, that's what we're here to do. So it's not like, you know, I mean, our foundation is us. Like, we're contributing our money to this guy. And I'm not saying that to brag about us. It's like, hey, we're here to help. You know, right now, my family's fed. So what can I do? I can help. Right? I'm not going to buy a nice car.
But a lot of us are like-minded. Because we're, like I said earlier, we have the same commander's intent. We're just doing it differently. You're doing it differently. But I'm doing it differently, but I'm doing it my way too. I feel like, you know, promoting these veteran businesses, whether they're successful or they're struggling, it doesn't matter. But that's so critical to get that network out there so that we all know that we exist and we know where to find each other. Yeah,
it's super important. I mean, I met an investor years ago when I was first considering just being out of the military altogether. And this guy said, hey, I'd love to do a veterans business beehive. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I'd love to give veterans, you know, a few $100,000 each to start a business. And I'd put them all in the same building. No walls. Maybe cubicles, but no walls. And every week, all the businesses would have to contribute to one global beehive meeting, and then everyone can go about their business. Or maybe it was once a month. I don't know. And I thought that was a stupid idea at the time. But now I look back on it, I'm like, man, that sounds really good because you're...
Yeah, I was about to say, where's this guy?
I was much younger then. I don't know where he is now. And it wasn't a phone number, email exchange thing. It was a one-on-one meeting that I had an opportunity. So if it ever happened again, I would definitely help calibrate that to a successful recipe, because I think that's very, very important, especially when you look at, like, you know, how commercial real estate is and different office buildings and stuff. It makes sense to build these beehives. Now, not every business can do that. If you need a retail store, you can't just have an office and a beehive and then go travel to your retail store. So not every business model will work that way, but, you know, there's a lot that can be done good that come from that. And if that helps, you know, any mission of helping anyone out. I mean, look, successful businesses, you know, promote success in all their employees. And if that means we're hiring more veterans, hiring more first responders, family members, say a guy had relationship problems and lost his firefighter job, hey, we'll give you a job. We know you have a certain skill set.
Exactly. So if we had a network of all these veteran businesses, let's say we're all connected, looking 5 years into the future, and we have thousands of these veteran businesses, then we can link each other up. You lost a job? Okay, let's look up. Let's go into veteran. What industry are you looking into? You have 20 people here you can contact. Reach out to these veterans. They've been vetted. They've been approved by the 501c3. They are all willing to talk to you and give you some guidance. That will get people away from anxiety, depression, and suicide.
Absolutely.
I believe so.
You know, it's interesting as you say it and we talk about it. I think of, like, okay, well, LinkedIn is social media for business professionals, right? Facebook is social media for, I don't know, the water cooler discussion. But I think, like, restaurants have Facebook pages and LinkedIn pages too. But it doesn't make sense because it's too broad of a focus on those social media things. So where do restaurants network? On Yelp, right? So now there's that social media platform which drives business to them. So as you talk about this, it's almost like VeteranNet can become the Yelp for veteran businesses.
Exactly, and that's what we're trying for it to be.
It's a more narrow.
Now that's the low-hanging fruit that I was able to attack to put it in an online space. But in 2016, or was it 2018, I briefed in Syracuse University the idea of a warfighter sanctuary, which would look similar to this. Of course, there's a proof of concept, but it would be, for example, we have VFWs. You go there, there's a bar, raffles, meetings. We want to cut the fat and have it tailored to the modern warfighter, which is more into fitness, business, relationships, networking. Wouldn't it be great if we had a facility where we can go and you could schedule in a podcast, you could schedule in a presentation area, and maybe there's a guy there, a veteran, that is a guru on social media marketing or on using these softwares, and he can give you this guidance. I feel like that would be so helpful for veterans transitioning from active duty, trying to find their place in the world in the civilian sector, and at least having one place to start and go, okay, I have all access to so many capabilities here and so many veterans I can reach out to for some guidance.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think of all the tours I've done, whether it was on military bases in America or big installations overseas or even small installations in desolate areas, especially like the Air Force, they always try to like, oh, well, here's the gym, here's the movie theater, here's the popcorn, the MWR facility, right? Morale,
Exactly.
welfare, and recreation.
Yeah.
And they try to instill this behavior, but it's funny because you talk about the VFW. The VFW is kind of like the poor man's version of that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's what their goal was,
I know.
but that's what it materialized into.
You're 100% correct, yeah.
And if the VFW was a free gym membership instead of a bar,
Bingo.
you would stimulate different growth.
Exactly. And that's how I envision this big warehouse where we don't have gym machines that are going to break. We have weights. We have free weights. We have a cage. We have 5 cages. I picture 10 Xboxes or PlayStations, a podcast area, presentation area, business machines. All the software that you have to pay for, you should have access for it there. And when folks come here, we're networking. We're drinking espresso. We're talking business. We're talking networking. That's how you keep veterans alive.
I would start a business for a veteran in that instance, and I would say this business is going to buy at a very discounted price all of the military's old tires from all the military vehicles, the trucks and the Humvees and all that, airplanes even, anything, buy all the rubber, the military's, DRMOing. I wasn't religious.
Dermo, yeah.
And
I was.
So all the rubber the military is getting rid of, buy it at this stupid discounted price rather than them disposing of it through the normal municipality functions. And then I would grind all that rubber up and I'd make all of these facilities use that grinded rubber. That's how this guy's business would make the weights. He'd make the dumbbell weights and the barbell weights out of this grinded up rubber. Well, as you said that, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's the business idea I think of. Like,
Yeah.
oh, cool, boom. This guy's got a
Absolutely.
business.
Yep.
Now we can help. Oh, who needs a business? You. Come on, let's go build this.
Who's looking for work? We don't have that never. So we do it. Everything I'm talking about, it's not like Andre invented this. I even said the other day, the Roman Legion did this. I'm sure that, guys that serve together, like, hey, I know who to hire. Because you said, he proved his work ethic. I've seen this guy work. I want him on my side when we do this business venture. So why don't we do that with intention? And that's what this is all about.
Well, even the VFW, they probably started off as a great idea.
We did. And it still is, because I'm a big supporter of the VFW. I'm a life member because they represent us in Congress at the Hill, and they do tremendous for us. But at the local level, it doesn't meet my requirements. I wish it did. I've gone so many times, but it's always the same old thing.
I'd be interested to see an analysis of the data. Do urban areas or cities or towns that have a active participation at their VFW, do they have lower veteran suicide and alcohol problems?
That would be good to look into.
And if they do or don't, then can you measure their impact against anything? Are they making a positive impact at the local level? Like, okay, at the congressional level, got it, swing the bat.
Absolutely.
But what are they doing on the ground, right?
Exactly.
I mean, the
What
military...
those metrics are being collected, because that would be a good metric to collect.
Yeah, that would. I don't know who would do it. If I have to find a college that would want to energize that idea.
Well, we do. Well, see, this right here, what we're doing is networking, because right now, the VFW down in South Beach, they're changing. Now, it's a long story. They're out of charter right now or whatever, but they are in line with what we're talking about.
What's the VFW? I've never been to the VFW in South Beach. I'm just picturing
it's
a bunch
insane.
of guys in tank tops and...
Well, it's closed right now, but we have the greatest view. I'm a member. We have the best view of Miami on the water. We have a boat slip. We got
wow.
2 floors in a hotel. It was a millionaire veteran who left 2 floors out of the hotel to the VFW, and
Well,
we
there
got
you go.
8 parking spots. It's excellent, and we want to exploit that.
Yeah, we need more of that. The problem, I think, is too many people have tried to create or plagiarize what they think was successful in location A, and they go to location B and build it, and it just doesn't come out right. And then they hold on to it, and it becomes disastrous, and then it just becomes another bar with cheap beer.
That's why I want to keep away from the alcohol. I want alcohol on weekends. We can have a social event. That's fine. But I don't want alcohol as like a reoccurring, like, oh, I'm going to go to the VFW. Oh, so you mean you want to go drink? You know what I mean? Because that's kind of where it's become.
Well, that's the stigma, right?
That's the stigma.
That is the stigma. And every VFW I've gone to was to have a drink.
Yeah.
I've never gone to the VFW and said, let's go participate in this thing. I've gone for other events, whether it was, celebrating or memorializing an operation, memorializing an airplane crash or something.
Yes.
I've gone to these events, these tributary events, but it still was like, we're going to drink there.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's interesting that, alcohol, it's such a large, loud topic nowadays because you can measure the negative impact more than you can measure any positive impact on it. I mean, the positive impact of consuming alcohol is probably right now in the moment, and
That's
how
it.
we all high five and hug each other. But you know, the negative impacts of it long term are probably outweighing that. And I think, look, I'm not going to say I don't drink. I still
Yeah, absolutely.
enjoy a beverage with everyone now and then. But if you're going through what you would describe as the tribulations of your life, downfall, then
And that's the go-to for too many of us veterans. That's the first thing we reach for when we're going through a hard time. When I went through my hard time, when we bought, I'm sure when you went, when all of us do, it's the first thing we do. And I don't know why it's been ingrained in us. We've been indoctrinated, like the solution, the temporary solution, and we know it. It's not like, oh well, I'm gonna have a hangover and I'm gonna be depressed tomorrow. We know all that. We're like, but for right now,
yeah. So I get this. You know, I'm not smart enough to say, well, it's doing this to my dopamine and all that other stuff. I don't need to know the chemistry of it to see the reality of it manifesting. I can see the good now and the bad later. You know, so be it. So it's very interesting. You know, I mean, even last night at Shadow Defense's foundation event, it was alcohol, right? It was a lounge. But I made sure I was still in work mode, so I only had a couple. And then once everyone clocked out and the event was over, then I grabbed a cigar and relaxed. But at the same time, you know, there's a positive thing that came from doing this at a bar. And so that can still work. You don't have to omit it completely.
that's why I don't want to omit it. That's why I think we could still have it for social events. Plus, it's ingrained in our military, and we can have an event like, hey, let's have the social event. We're gonna have salsa night, karaoke, and we'll drink Saturday night.
Well, and sometimes,
But the rest of the week, we're here for business or working out or something positive.
I think there's almost like, you know, the church used to have a stigma about it. Sometimes maybe it still does based on your perspective and whatever your social outlook is on things. But people would look at the church and go, you know, church isn't for me. I'm too dirty for the church. And a friend, a Marine friend, his mom told him something, and he passed the message on to me. He's like, and I'm sure people have said this many different ways over thousands of years, but the church is meant to be a hospital for sinners more than a holy place for saints, right? And so
Wow, profound. Very
if you omit everything, alcohol, pool tables, and stuff that veterans were used to on their active duty bases or in the ship or in a port or wherever, if you make it look like something they're not used to, then it takes on a negative stigma to them. You know, I can't speak for everyone, but I know a younger version of myself. If you're like, hey, let's go to the VFW, they have a prohibition on alcohol, no cigarettes, and I'm like, well, I would say, why would I go there, right? And if you want to really introduce the concept and have it received well, it should be somewhat, you know, mirroring what they've been exposed to.
Exactly. No, I agree with that. I agree with that. But that's why I say I would like it on the weekends, and then during the week, it should emulate an MWR with a focus on business.
It should be a business. It should be a business, right? Just like, you know, active duty military. When you're clocked in, you're working, right? We're trying to figure out how to break stuff or kill people. As a United States military, we're not slamming shots at the same time we're doing that.
Exactly.
Shouldn't be.
Sometimes it was. But we're not going to talk about
Yeah,
that.
I don't want to.
You're still active duty.
I don't want to say anything bad. But it.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, the military exists, like I said, to break stuff and kill people, defend America.
100%.
And we do that by breaking stuff and killing people. And sometimes we teach other people to do it, and that's the weapon that wields that. Now, you can go into many layers as to what that really looks like and manifests, but at the end of the day, it's not an easy job, and I mean, therefore, it's not going to rest well in everyone's brains. Therefore, when everyone comes home, it's not going to be as easy. And then what do you do when they're home? There's nothing. Well, there's stuff, but it's not working.
When you're trying to save as many as you can, who do you start with? Well, let's start with the low-hanging fruit. These guys, they just got out of active duty. They're looking for work. They're motivated, still have their work ethic. Let's not let them just fall into this depression, because then it's going to be harder to lift them up. And that's why I said, hey, let's have a directory where they can all find each other. And then what the long-term dream is to have a sanctuary, a warfighter sanctuary, where they can go and they can get peace from everyone else, and they can play video games, they can work out. They're going to run into other veterans that are doing businesses, that are networking, and they can fall into that organically. That's why I like the idea of it's an MWR. It's not just business, because that would be boring as hell. Like, this is just business, just coming for business. Like, we do business, but we also do other things, you know.
You know, as I think about this too, it's exciting because I think of, you said video games, and you look at today's culture and where people are going with this video game thing. I'm in a group chat with a bunch of other warrant officers right now. and they're all talking about playing video games. And I think there's two of us who don't resonate with that.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I've played video games, but it's never become like a part of my identity. And it's interesting to see the new generation, younger generation, that's what is part of their identity. For me, it was like, oh, I'm gonna go play basketball tonight. That's what we're gonna do. And now I see it, and so you have to find a way to connect with them. And that's not easy to do, right? Crossing generational gaps to still bridge these connections. So video games is important, but then I start thinking about other things. You know, there's probably even people who video games are negatively affecting their life.
Oh, absolutely. Well, anything, too much of anything is going to.
And I think of, so I earned myself a divorce once, and that's a story for another day, but it put me in a really dark place. And one of the things that I had to do, this was not by design or intention, but I came across a contracting opportunity as a civilian, and so I took it. I had to move 8 hours away from the kids, and I then had to realign my priorities with what my behavior was, and therefore I had to cut back on my independent social activity. I almost felt like I was complacent originally in my relationship. Like, okay, this is it. I've made it. No more work needs to be done. And then I found therapy and solace in cooking, because I had my condo. I was living by myself. Monday through Thursdays was very, very quiet at home, and I had a choice. And I lived 50 meters from the closest bar.
Wow.
I could go outside and throw a football and hit. Well, maybe not 50. I could go outside and throw a football and hit the bar, though. And don't get me wrong, I went to the bar, right? You can't just be a recluse in your townhome and condo. So I started cooking, and I just started studying cooking. I didn't go to culinary school. I just was watching YouTube. You know, I call it YouTube University.
Yeah.
I just picked up a little skill.
That's where everyone goes.
Yeah, I picked up a little skill because I couldn't work on the car because the Condo Homeowners Association, you weren't allowed to work on your car in the parking lot. So I was like, all right, what am I going to do? What's going to be my hobby? And so I picked up cooking. And so I think as you talk about this, you know, ideal sanctuary, it should be able to teach people anything. I think I'm drawing a correlation of like, well, these video game generation, I don't know if it's Gen Z or whatever it is, I don't keep up with the categories. Kids don't know how to change the oil on a car. They don't know how to fix a hole in drywall. And so there could almost just be, you know, clinics. Like I think of like when I
Life skills, basic life skills.
When I coach volleyball, right? If kids are struggling with serving, we do a serving clinic. So it's like if there's life skills that are missing in people's, you know, skill set, here's how you change the oil on your car. Here's how you run a tune-up. Here's how you patch a hole in drywall. Life skills, right? It's interesting, my kids don't take wood shop in school, and I did growing up, right? And I'm not super old. I'm not even 40 yet. Let's put it that way.
Wow. Really?
And I took wood shop in school,
Yeah.
so for me, for my kids not to take it seems like, what are we doing wrong? So I had to replace that. Thankfully, we were able to take advantage of the homeschooling time during COVID, so we started making furniture at the house.
Awesome.
So my entire bedroom set was made by the kids and I, our dining room table and benches. We framed a whole bench into the walls, permanently fixed the wall, built storage. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm teaching my kids that, and I realize other kids don't get taught this anymore, and they don't even get introduced to the idea of it because it's removed from the school. Like, I knew about sewing. I'm horrible at sewing. I think I failed my home economics class because of how bad I sew in school growing up and how bad I cooked growing up. I didn't want to cook a quiche.
Yeah.
But now I love cooking. And so I think a sanctuary type model is definitely the right answer, macro solution, and it should bring access. It should bring access to veterans, and I mean, you know, I take my shadow defense perspective from our foundation, and I'm like, I would give access to every American the ability to gain skills that give their life more intrinsic value. Right? There's a good feeling when you're like, look at that wall. I made that wall. My kids feel great when they built our dining room table. We got this big barn-sized table.
Gardening.
Making
your own tomato. Kids will eat tomatoes if they're growing tomatoes.
The reward of the video game victory is probably similar to that of alcohol. It's like a right now thing.
Right quick, boom. Yeah.
Whereas like the table we have at our house, our kids have been eating on it for 5 years now. They know that they built that table. When their kids come over, the kids go, I made that.
Wow.
Right? Not to show off.
Yeah, but they're proud. They're taking pride in something that they created.
And so I think that, you know, if you really want to zoom out and describe things in the most macroscopic way as possible, it's like a lot of veterans might just be missing these opportunities to give their life intrinsic value. I follow a lot of successful business podcasts and authors, and you watch these short clips and long form podcast discussions. And one of the things that I've noticed is no matter how successful anyone's business is, if they don't have strong value when they wake up every day, strong meaning and purpose when they wake up every day, they're not going to feel good about it. And there was a guy, he still is a guy, Gary Vaynerchuk. He's a business guy.
Oh yeah, Gary V. Yeah.
Gary V.
Love
and
him.
I think I'm going to paraphrase. I'm going to do a horrible job at it, but he's like, if you find pleasure and passion and joy in making $50,000 a year and working as a cashier or a store manager for, Bed Bath & Beyond, then you've already won. That's the value that you needed. If that's not you and you're the entrepreneur and, that's his whole focus is to get guys into entrepreneur stuff, then yeah, go after that. But if you're happy working in the government, local, Parks and Rec, then do it. If that's what brings you. So it's funny because even these rich and famous guys, I think he's part owner, going to be owner of the Jets or something is one of his shticks. You got guys with hundreds of millions of dollars in value talking about if you find value in being a garbage man, and that hits home for me. Like, there's intrinsic
Absolutely.
value. I don't consider myself like an entrepreneur, even though we're talking about multiple businesses. You and I had a conversation beforehand. I just look at everything as me doing my job. Everything I do, I'm just doing my job to help out everyone, because that's what I feel like my job is just to help out everyone. My job at work is I work for the people who are out, doing stuff, whether I'm doing operations management, manufacturing, supply chain stuff. I'm helping the supply chain get to their finish line, their destination, so it can help get our products to their destination, so our products can help the user get to their destination. So to me, it's just this chain of intrinsic value of helping people.
No, that's interesting because it's how you give purpose to yourself and to what you're doing.
Yeah.
100%. And I feel that way with the nonprofit, and I feel that way with real estate. For example, with real estate, I could be like, oh, I'm selling homes. I don't see it that way. I see it as I'm going to help this family, just like you said, get to the finish line. I'm going to do everything I can to get them there most effectively. When you look at it that way, it's totally different.
Tell you a story how about my house. So again, I joined the military, and I had spent a lot of nights sleeping on a bus stop.
Oh, man.
And so less than 20 years after joining the military, I was able to buy my first home. So there was a pretty strong emotional moment.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I decided, all right, I'm going to buy my first home. How am I going to do it? And I almost adopted the warrior sanctuary or veternet concept before I even knew it was a real thing, because I said, I'm going to call this guy who I know is a Marine, because I put him through jump school. I know he's a realtor.
Okay.
So I called him. He was an admin Marine. He wasn't an operator. He wasn't a shooter. He's an admin guy, and he did travel claims. But I put him through jump school, so he always took care of my travel claim. But I knew he was a realtor, so I called him, and I was like, and I didn't want to just call USAA and get a mortgage. I mean, yeah, I got quotes from everywhere I could to see what the best rates were at the time. But I was like, wait, there's another Marine who I put through jump school, and he was a motor T guy. Because as a jump master, we're putting guys through jump school. So I was like, he's a motor T guy, but now he's a mortgage broker. So I called him. So the day we closed on the house, the first picture I took before the family and I took a pictures with those two guys. Because, the realtor, you got to do the closing photo, the handshake closing photo.
Right.
But it was I made the three of us do it.
Yeah.
And it was, three Marines standing there. The customer, the realtor, and the mortgage broker.
Exactly.
How many times does a mortgage broker go to closing?
Yeah, right?
They don't.
You don't.
But because we were all Marines, we had that purpose, that value, and so I think they're both doing completely different jobs or careers now.
Really?
I think so. I don't know. I got to follow back up.
But see, and that's what I do. Like, we're here, my loan officer, veteran, inspector, veteran. And I know because these guys are on point. If I call them, I go, I know he's going to be on time. I know he's going to be there. I know what to expect. And leveraging that really helps a lot in every industry.
Yeah, my realtor, he probably could have dumped us off. I think I want to say we had, before we actually got the victory, we probably were on contract number 8.
Oh, man.
And it wasn't that we fell out.
Yeah.
It was cash market.
I remember it.
Cash market, 2019, 2020.
Yeah.
Before the COVID boom. And we closed on our house December, I think, 10th, 2020.
Wow.
So Like 4 weeks later, the house was like almost 2x.
Yeah, that's how it was. And I remember exactly that time because I wasn't even working in real estate at that time, but I remember how it was insane.
Yeah, so that move, even just by me buying the house, that helped me realize that I can bring life to this fraternity of veteran concept. And again, I extend it beyond that because in order, what's that saying? It takes, I'm gonna butcher all these sayings.
Butcher away.
A family can, parents can raise a child, but it takes a tribe to raise a family. I think it's something like that. And it made me realize that community is more important. And today's disaggregated community, because we're all connected through these boxes, these digital boxes, your community is further away than just your neighborhood street anymore. Now, I still wanted that, so that's why we moved to where we moved, which is, far north of here. But at the same time, I realized that you could bring reality to this community just with a little extra effort. It didn't take a lot of extra effort for me to get the right guys to buy my house. And that made me realize I could bring life to this. And so then, my friend and I, Justin from Shadow, we're working hard to try to bring a lot of people together, the right resources together to help people, right? Look, if I was rich, I would fix everyone's problems.
Yeah, me too.
But I would also do it the right way. I'm not going to give away, free cheddar. But at the same time, there's already enough resources available to solve everyone's problems and do it the right way. So I'm hoping that we can just make a small impact and bring people together that way. At least that's what we're doing with Shadow, and I know you're doing great things with BetterNet.
Exactly, and with VeteranNet, getting the successful veteran businesses. Let's start with those guys, because I tell people all the time, if I get a lead, for example, through VeteranNet, through the directory, and someone hires me to do that, I'm going to donate right back to VeteranNet because it's helping the small guy that doesn't have those resources, and that's how I envision it. These big successful businesses, well, it's tax deductible anyway. Why don't you help the little businesses try to start? Let's start a Shark Tank, and we'll have veterans come through, and then they can brief us on their business plan, and we can select as a community, as a tribe, and say, hey, you know what, Teddy, you got a great idea. We're this year or this month, we're going to contribute to start that. Let's see your business plan. Let's see if it's going to work. Let's help you build that, and then let's use all our resources collectively to make you successful. And then once that's done, we're going to go get the next guy, and we're all going to do that. And I think that's so much better than going out and asking for money from everywhere. It's just living within our community itself.
Yeah, there's an organization there, 501c3. I'll support them forever. I got to make a 2024 contribution now. I said it out loud, but the Semper Fi Foundation. I think they're headquartered out of Tampa. Bank, I don't know, or the lady I always spoke to is in Tampa. Semper Fi Foundation.
I've heard of them, but I've never.
They help Marines out with small time problems, and I think when I was getting divorced and had a lot of attorney bills, I called on them. I'm like, hey, I really need to pay like my electric bill or whatever. They're like, we can't do that, but we'll send you, here's some gas cards. And I was young and I was a little more irresponsible with money than I am now. And till this day, I've turned around to come support them. Till this day, I get a Christmas ornament from them in the mail every year. I mean, and this is like 7-8 years ago.
Wow.
And I don't maintain like comms with anyone. And so it's interesting that my kids know them. They're like, oh, the ornament's here. They know it now.
Yeah.
And so it's that value in and of itself, right? It's, oh yeah, that's great marketing. That's great branding from them when you observe the business practice of that. But what they're doing is, what a lot of us need to be doing is they're just doing the right thing. Like, how many people mail Christmas cards to each other anymore? Right. And so I go back to intrinsic value on this. And if we're sanctuaring VeteranNet, if it forces people to come together and talk more often. I remember when I worked for the communication shop at ANGLICO, the ComTech, he would send me Christmas cards even like 5 or 6 years after he left.
Really?
And I didn't know why at the time, because I was just a single guy.
Yeah.
I was like, whatever. I didn't know why at the time. But now I think back and I look at these things and I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. And then when I get Christmas cards now, I look at it like, okay, does it have like does it say like, oh, Shutterfly, they just put a spreadsheet into a database, or is it a real thing that they signed or whatever? I look at it differently now because I'm like, are people doing it because they want to walk through the motions? Like some of the local VFWs maybe just walk through the motions, or are people doing things because they really want to make that connection stronger, or at least say thank you for the connection that we've already had? That's interesting. I mean, I look at how I stumbled back to meeting with you. We haven't seen each other for 19 years.
19 years.
And we're here now because I think of a mutual position of looking at what can we bring back to the people. We've both been through some really dark times. I know that.
Yeah, brother. Let me tell you what. But that is excellent. I love it. So that's your second business. So that's the second one.
Well, I combined EH Brain Group and Shadow in that same conversation.
So what challenges do you have, like starting it, learning it, and what would have helped you? Do you wish? Of course, we're kind of circling back to Warfighter Sanctuary, like how, because again, I like to hear this, like with the challenges you ran into, because that helps me come up with the requirements for what should we be when people come out of active duty and they're trying to transition to the civilian sector. What would be most helpful? For example, one of the things that I find helpful right now is learning social media, because I feel like veterans of any industry need to be able to promote themselves. So that's a skill set that if I got good at, I can teach veterans, and it would be a low cost but high impact, because that would help these small businesses get their branding, get their marketing out there. But there's lots of things to do. That's just one idea.
Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people. We have a saying, I have a saying at the office right now. Anything worth doing is worth doing right. And it's a spin-off of what this Army Special Forces communications sergeant taught me a long time ago in Iraq. And because I was a comm guy on my first team, and he was the comm guy for his team, and we were on the same deployment working together for 6 months. And I was like, hey, I know how to do this cool field expedient antenna to talk to long range stations. He's like, yeah, it works. He goes, but it doesn't look good. I'm like, what do I care if it looks good? He goes, when you do it the right way and it looks like it was professionally manufactured, he goes, not only does it work, but now people gain more trust in your ability to do it. And I thought about this, and I was
almost
like,
a 9-line.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, right. I mean, if you're briefing an aircraft, if you don't sound like it was professionally manufactured, the aircrew loses confidence in you, and then they start double checking your work without even saying it. And so, anyone starting a business or approaching any problem to solve, I try. Even some of the young guys at work, I'm like, hey, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing. I'll give you a quick example. We had a guy, we just doubled our square footage at our headquarters in Jupiter, and we had a guy want to spruce up the office a little bit. So he's like, I'm going to put American flag on the wall. And we're an American business, right? A lot of veterans. Makes sense. Put an American flag on the wall. On the other side of the building, in the headquarters office where I sit, we have an American flag. It's on a stand. It's a beautifully embroidered flag. This guy buys a flag on Amazon. And so he's searching in the
made in China,
and he doesn't. Thank God it did. I thought it did, but we didn't know what he was going to do. He wanted to surprise us, so he has value. He wants a positive response, of course. But we just see him go into the back workshop, which you got to walk right by me and the CEO. He walks right by us, and he just doesn't say nothing, which is fine. We're not a micromanagement shop. But he goes, "Hey, does anyone know where the grommets and the hole punch are?" And those products are meant for parts of products we manufacture and sell. And we're like, wait a minute, there's not that kind of product operation going on today. What are you doing? He's like, I need the grommets. I'm like, what for? So we investigate a little bit, and I go next door. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I want to put this American flag on the wall. I'm like, so you want to punch a hole in the American flag on your own? So let me see this flag, because I was like, I have a flag up in my garage. I bought it that way. It came with the 4 grommets, and I made sure it was made in America, and it was embroidered. So he pulls out this Amazon flag. It's still in the Amazon, package, and it's not in a box or nothing. So I already know it's a cheap made flag. It's transparent. The material is so weak. You can see through it. I'm like, you can't put this flag up. He goes, why not? And he actually gets upset. And I can appreciate why he's upset, because we give everyone a hard time about attempting to achieve some sort of level of perfection in the results. But without explaining why, his frustration is solid in logic. So I said, let me explain why. I said, is this flag made in America? He goes, I don't know. Of course it is. I'm like, no, not of course.
Not at all.
I was like, so I look on the little...
I've made that mistake. That's how I know.
I look on the little tag that's on the flag, and it says, made by American seamstresses. And I'm like, that's a really weird statement.
That's a very weird workaround.
So I'm already like...
Man portable, I can tell you about that in the military.
So Americans go fly to China? I don't know. So I said, let's explore. I said, show me the Amazon page. So I grab his phone, he shows me the page. I click on the manufacturer. Nowhere does it say made in USA on that Amazon page. So all right, take out my phone, I Google them, go to their website, find out headquarters, all that. It's in New York. For whatever reason, they didn't put made in USA. Good for them. Horrible business model. They don't care about that because it's a cheap made flag.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I said, all right, so it's not made in China. I'm like, you're still not putting this flag up. He goes, why not? I'm like, think about it like this. The size of this flag is not the right size. What do you mean? I'm like, do you even know flag etiquette? Do you know the American flag is made based on a law? There's a whole statute on this from Congress. So I showed it to him and I educated him on it. So once I ran him through, I'll finish this up quickly now. Once I ran him through, what is the right size and dimensions for a flag? What's the rate? Why is there only so many certain flag sizes that the government will use? Because of the ratio of length times width, right? And there's certain fly heights for different ones, and you can only orient it a certain way. Once I walked him through these things, he was starting to understand a little bit more and became less frustrated. And then I realized that, well, I said, why didn't you buy the right flag? Because he's like, I know what the right flag is. I'm like, well, why didn't you buy it? Couldn't afford it. I'm like, you don't think we'd reimburse you as an employee or contractor to get this thing done and make the? I'm like, we'll cover that. I'm like, now you harmed your own intention by trying to operate in surprise. I understand why. But once I made the value of what we're trying to achieve a reality for him and I understood him, there's an education that goes to it. And that's kind of my point here. Once we educate people on why things should be done the right way, they're more in tune to want to do it the right way. It's not just simply, hey, do it the right way. Yeah, that works when you're on active duty in the military.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have a choice. But if I can't bring you value, right, you're not going to want to. And one of the, I think the easiest ways was transparency, right? And so like explaining a business, like a lot of people go, why do we still have business meetings in today's day and age? Well, it's an opportunity I think it's an opportunity for me to bring transparency and value to you in a medium that you're not going to get on the day to day. I've got remote workers, we've got in-house workers, and we still try to do meetings. Sometimes the meetings go too long and we all feel like that, but I'm like, at least we answered all the questions. We provided full transparency on the direction we're going with certain things. Because sometimes people are like, hey, we can't spend the money on that budget decision.
But there's no why.
There's no why. So they'll walk away from that response and go,
we'll do it anyway. We'll just do it this way. We'll outsmart them.
Exactly. So on a grander perspective, anything, that's why I stand by this principle, anything we do or anything worth doing is worth doing right, qualifying it. And then how do you take people there? And it goes back to everything that we're talking about, because if it's done right, you, like I talked about with the kids and the furniture, you've given someone intrinsic value, a reward system that's not just, again, that instant dopamine hit or whatever it is. It's something more valuable to them over a longer period of time. And so even if this sanctuary does things, do it right. Like we talk about the VFW doing a lot of things not right. That's why no one wants to go. Some of us want to go.
We want to go. See, that's the thing. We want it to be great. It's just not.
Yeah.
And it's they've lost touch, and I've heard people tell me, well, just go there and talk to them. I'm like, I have tried that for so long. That's why I briefed Syracuse University on a warfighter sanctuary, because they're not going to bend. And it revolves around alcohol. You can't take, and I don't want to compromise what they have. Those older guys, they created it that way. You don't want to take away what they have. So we just need our new thing. I go, we need our own thing. We just need our own thing. I think it's easier to build our own thing than to try to recreate and change what they already had for 100 years or whatever.
So I started off doing a business admin degree, but then I realized that's a glorified accounting degree, and I already have accountants that I have access to. So why would I do that? I wanted more value out of my degree. I didn't want to just take a degree. I've seen some veterans do it. I'm not knocking it.
Gotcha.
They just use their benefits to get the degree.
To the BAA and to get the BAH.
Yeah, I wanted to actually gain something. So I switched my major to organizational management.
Okay.
Because you can get a bachelor's in org management and then still get an MBA later on from certain schools. Yep. So that's my long-term goal. Probably going to take me a lot longer than I originally anticipated, but.
Well, you're doing just only because you're doing so much. You're fully capable, obviously.
Yeah, and then I'm also coaching the kids' volleyball teams.
Oh man, wow, you're in deep.
So I do all that, and Teddy,
you're like me on steroids, dude. I don't know how you do it, because I do a lot of things, but you got a family, you got so much, man. How do you do this, brother?
Caffeine is probably my first degree.
Well, we really had Café Bustelo.
Yeah.
Bustelo.
Yeah, if my old friend Andy Fernandez didn't teach me, we were in Belize.
Yeah.
And we were in
And he brought his little
we were in the Belizean Defense Force.
Yeah.
We're sleeping in this, half clamshell shelter,
Yeah.
and he taught me how to make Café Bustelo the right way, how to percolate it.
Yeah.
And the Mortazavi brothers, they taught me.
Yeah.
You pour a little in, then you mix the sugar.
Yeah,
And
and
then
crush the sugar,
you
yeah.
pour the rest in.
Yeah.
And so.
That's great.
Caffeine has been very helpful to me.
Andy Fernandez, first time in the field with ANGLICO,
Yeah.
I'm with him, and he's always prepared. He brings a little rum.
Yeah.
Little rum. Last
Oh,
night
yeah.
we're passing it around, and
Oh yeah.
drinking coffee every day, the whole nine.
Oh yeah. So but for me, I looked at I was like, what if I just turn everything off? What if I just go back to like what the standard American, I'm not going to call it the American dream, but it's what we're sold, the American dream. What if I just go,
White picket fence.
I can go be a
Basic house.
contractor again and be 9 to 5 or 7 to 3, whatever, and just
Basic.
And I was like, at that point in my life when I was doing that, I needed that time to build my own therapeutic outlets. And now that I found those, I've figured out that I can do a lot more with my time. Then I realized as I grew a family, it took me a lot of mistakes. It cost me a lot of mistakes, a lot of tears, a lot of money, a lot of pain to figure out that when you have your family, you got to build that first. And, and it's weird. It's
That's a hard lesson, brother.
It is very hard.
I lost my family.
I got lucky.
Yeah.
I got lucky. Timing, by the grace of God, and I think a little bit of hard work by me, I was able to, bring everything back together. And it's beautiful now, and I wouldn't want to risk it for anything. And it's never easy. That's the other part, right? Like when you talk to anyone about business, like what is your goal? I talk to any veteran about their business, their career, whatever it is. What is your goal? Are you trying to relax? Because that's not a good goal to have. You can find moments to relax. I find those too. I remember, was it last night? Yeah, last night I was like, yesterday, it wasn't last night. I was like, all right, I've got an hour before I got to go coach this workout it's a 2.5 hour workout I do for the team on Sundays.
What team?
The volleyball team.
Gotcha.
And I was like, all right, I got an hour.
When you say team, hold on, brother. I got to stop you right there. When you say team, I'm like, is it an SF team? Is it an ANGLICO team? You're like, volleyball team. Roger that. You got to be clear, man.
Yeah, so teenage volleyball team.
Okay, all right.
Right, teenage, and it's 12 girls and 1 guy.
Okay.
And I'm and me, the coach, is a guy. And so I coach Sundays, a 2-hour workout, and
Wow.
And it's great.
Yeah.
Like we get more done there. But I also my focus of the team is we don't play for the Friday night game. We don't train for the Friday night games. We train for the tournament. Mm-hmm. That's where our real focus is. Mm-hmm. The game is just free practice. It's a free test on how well we've been doing in practice. And it also tells you that when you're under pressure, are you going to do the things that we've been practicing? And so I'm teaching the kids a lot of the same things that I'm speaking about now. Is it's about hard work. You have to learn how to lose, right? You have to learn how to lose. Learning how to fail is a skill in and of itself.
Absolutely. The riddle of steel.
Some people fail bad, and that makes it worse, right? Because now they're people who don't know how to fail gracefully and create collateral damage in those disasters. And so that's bad. But I saw I had an extra hour, and I was like, all right, what am I going to do with this hour? And I was like, all right, I'm going to start taking the tiles off in the master bathroom shower and doing regrout. And I thought to myself, I'm like, can I be productive in this hour? And I'm like, yeah, I could. I'm like, why don't I just relax for an hour? And I did. And I wrestled with the dog at home for like 15 minutes, but it eats at me a little bit when I go, oh, I relaxed. I shouldn't have relaxed. That's probably my own demonstrative brain, but at the same time, relaxing for an hour is a better goal to have than saying, I'm going to build my life to the point where I don't have to exert energy and stress. Stress is positive at the same time. And so I tell people all the time who ask me, like, you should be looking for a challenge. You should never want to feel like you've broken free from the chains of hard work, is how I think about
100%.
it. My biggest challenge is reconnecting and strengthening bonds with guys. Now, the greatest thing we have is we can go 10 years, we can go 19 years without seeing each other.
And it's like yesterday.
And it's a hug, right?
Oh my! We spoke. I think for those out there, we spoke 2-3 hours before we even started this podcast. Like, hey, let's warm up, let's catch up. And I'm like, we got to start this podcast because we're never going to catch up. We're just going to keep going.
I know.
So Teddy, we spoke about your businesses. Let's talk a little bit about your illustrious career. I love your career. I love the fact that we met 19 years ago when you were a private first class. It's like we did a handoff. I just returned from Iraq from 2003, 2004. Just got back. You were private first class. You were skinny.
Yeah,
how much did you weigh back then?
Oh, back then, I think I was 130.
Wow. You're solid. You're solid now. And
oh, man.
So what have you accomplished since then? We talked about it for 3 hours, but I want to hear.
Yeah, that was.
Let's hear the.
I never said my weight out loud back then. 130. That's a good
130. That's crazy. I think I was about 130, 140 when I was a PFC.
I was a runner back then, and I loved running even in high school and then the Marine Corps.
What inspired you to join the Corps in the first place? Like out of everything that you could have picked, I think you kind of mentioned it earlier, but you still picked the Marine Corps over the other branches. So what was that? What movie did you see, or what influence? What Vietnam veteran did you run into?
I wouldn't say it was a movie or anything, but it was an influence. It was my recruiter. I won't say his name because I know he's had some public troubles in the past.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's interesting. We got to talk about that.
Yeah, we could talk about that one for the vault. Yeah. The recruiter came up to me in high school. I was captain of the football team. Came up to me.
Really awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Came up to me in high school and tried to recruit me, and Marines are the best, and he had confidence, and I was like, all right. Mm-hmm. No one else, like Army, didn't proactively come to our high school.
I recruited for 6 months. I know how they were.
And so, it was easy. It was a convenient thing. But you probably could have been a, vacuum door-to-door salesman and swindled me over at that point in my life. So that's what he did. Then I was 17 and it didn't work out. And my father, I think, kicked him out of the house one day.
Kicked you out of the house?
Kicked him out. Kicked me out later, but kicked the recruiter out of the house when I was in high school.
Oh, shit.
Because I didn't understand. This was 2002. Yeah. I didn't understand we were at war. I was so naive. I was so naive to that. I was focused on my own life, my own close circle. And my upbringing was so traumatic through foster care and finally being back with my, father.
Did you go through foster care?
Oh, yeah, foster care for years.
So did I.
So having a family was challenging in and of itself, and being successful in school. I was naturally smart and gifted, so I could take good tests and get good grades, but I had bad behavior. Yeah. I had horrible behavior, which I guess it makes for a good Marine. A lot of people would agree with that. And then later on, I'm not doing. I graduate high school. I'm not doing well. I've got nowhere to live. I'm not getting along with anyone, even if they let me stay at their place.
Wow.
And the recruiter sees me on a bus stop bench. I want to say it was Oakland Park Boulevard and University Drive, southwest corner. There's
waiting for a bus.
Yeah, I took the city bus everywhere. Yeah. There's a Lowe's. I don't know if it's still there now. Broward County. There's a Lowe's there. I always liked that bus stop because it was fully encased with plexiglass, so if it was raining, you wouldn't get wet. So I could stay there forever. And
but when you say stay, that's what I'm saying. Were you waiting for a bus, or you were?
At this moment, I think it was just sitting there in the morning. Like that was my couch.
Wow. So you were homeless for a little bit?
Yeah. Wow. That was fun. Wow. Challenging experience. I had a job. A buddy of mine from high school got me a job. I was doing phone calls for AARP. Telemarketing or something.
It's interesting because when you say that you were in that bench waiting for the bus, you say it, you're not embarrassed of it. It's almost like, hey, that's not a badge of honor, but like that's part of what you had to go through to get to where you are today, and it's just part of the journey sometimes.
It is. I look back and I'm like, well, I could have even as a teenager, I could have made decisions differently that would have prevented that from happening. I could have lived with my father through other decisions, but it's not who I was and who I became, and it's not what worked out for our relationship, which later worked out, I think, for the greater good, because we had a great relationship up until he passed away, almost 2 years ago now. And it was interesting because we went years without talking to each other, years, and I grew up without him. And so I don't regret any of those things. I mean, even like prior to going into foster care, I mean, obviously we're talking about way before the military, but when I was
How old were you when we went to the foster?
8 years old when we first went.
I was like about 11. Yeah.
And I remember
it's horrible. That's what I want to. Yeah.
And we were such, my brothers and sisters and I, we were such victims of, child abuse. And I always told myself, like, I always said this. I was the only one. I was the oldest of 6 at the time, at 8, and I was the only one who ever said this. I said, I thank everyone who put us in this position. It was a horrible position to be in.
Mm-hmm.
But I thanked everyone, and everyone was, why would you, like all the, because you got to go to counseling and therapy and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, why do you think? I'm like, because I wouldn't be here now. Because every day seems to always get better. When you start it from the bottom, everything gets better, right? So it's worked itself out. I mean, and so going back to why I joined the Marine Corps then, on this bus, he says, hey, is that Teddy Pernal from high school? And I probably looked a lot rougher at this time.
Yeah.
I said, yeah. He's like, you want to join the Marine Corps still? I'm like, if I can leave now. He goes, jump in.
Marine Corps recruiter, man. That's great.
So then he took me to lunch at a gentleman's club.
You like the Marine Corps yet? I love the Corps.
But then we got down to MEPS. I had to retake the ASVAB, and he thought I Christmas treed it. I'm a very good test taker, which helped me later for like John Master School and all the other schools, right? Yeah. Very good test taker. And I didn't want to wait. The ASVAB at the time in Miami, you had to take tests and you had to sit. If you finished that section in 5 minutes, it could be 20 minutes before they want to start the next section.
Yeah.
And I was like, screw this. I just went on to the next section myself, and I just finished the test. So I finished the ASVAB. I want to say it was like 30 or 40 minutes.
Wow.
And they pulled me out because, they see the monitor sees my scores printing out now because it was an automated system or whatever.
Like
and
a puff of smoke. Just appeared there.
And they're like, the recruiter left because he's assuming this is going to be a 2-hour ordeal. He left to go get lunch or something in Miami, meet a girl, something.
Yeah.
So they're chewing my ass in the Miami MEPS. They're like, why would you Christmas tree the test? You wasted a valuable seat, da-da-da-da, because they haven't looked. It's like, it was almost irony. They're waving the results, and they didn't read them.
Without reading them.
And
wow, that's great.
They called the recruiter. He comes, he's like, what the hell happened? He goes, give me that. And he looks at it. He goes, why are you guys yelling at him? He's like, he can qualify for any job he wants because I did really well. And so that's a funny story, but he's like, so you're good. I had a tattoo waiver. I think one of them, I'm not in a gang or related with it, but it flagged the FBI's gang tattoo database. So I had to do another supplementary interview for that and another tertiary interview for the security clearance for that. And
because you were comms. That's
right. And then so I told him I was going to walk because he's like, oh, we'll get you out of here in a month. I was like, I don't have anywhere to go.
Yeah.
I'm not leaving in a month. I said, if you tell me I'm leaving in a month, I'll rip this country. He's like, you already swore in? I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean anything.
I'm like, I don't care. And I was such a rough kid. I was like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
like,
what do you do? Yeah.
So he's like, fine, we'll get you out of here. So I guess that's what he's like, well, you got to do this ANGLICO program instead. And so that's how it was sold to me. So I was like, all right, cool.
Yeah, that's BS.
It worked out for me.
But it worked out
Again,
great.
It worked out for me. So 3 days later, I was on a plane. 3 days later, I was on a plane. I didn't know what I was getting into. Yeah. And so to bring closure to your question, the response, why the Marines? Because I didn't know this. I didn't know every Marine was a rifleman. None of that made sense to me. I was 18. I didn't know what a rifleman was.
Yeah.
But I said, listen, if I'm going to sign up for this, because now that I'm talking to them, I was like, now I know they're at war, and they bring you to the recruiting station, and there's all the recruiting. Yeah. So I'm like, well, why can't I go over there? Yeah. I said, if I'm going to go anywhere, I better have a gun. He's like, oh, I'll get you a job with a gun, don't worry. How the hell did I know? I didn't know, I was naive.
That is great.
I was so naive. And it's funny when I look at it now, because I thought I knew everything. God, I was so dumb.
Well, it's incredible, these recruiters, because I got recruited out of Miami, and this guy was great. So my friends were like, hey, you don't want to be an infantryman or anything like that, because when you get out, you're not going to be able to find a job. So I was like, all right. So he's like, get something else. So we're looking at I scored high. I'm probably not as high as you, but I scored pretty high. And then he's like, hey, we got embarkation. I'm like, embarkation? What is that?
That's a fancy word.
I've never even heard of that word. you know. And the truth is, I heard about that word my whole life because in Miami, all the Cubans use it.
Yeah.
From the Marlel left, boat lift, it's embarkation, and then when the slang in Miami is like when someone sells you out and doesn't pick you up, they embarcaron.
Oh yeah.
and then they use the Spanish version, go embarcated. It's like, they used to say, I don't think it's a big word now, but back in the 90s, it was like, oh man, he embarcated me, he didn't show up. So I didn't know what embarkation was. And then I go, so what's embarkation? He's like, embarkation? Man, that's badass. He's like, man, one day you're going to be a jump master. I'll never forget that. Because I was like, what? And then like 6 years into, being in ANGLICO, not 6 years, like a few years into it, I was like, that guy lied to me. Jump master has nothing to do with embarkation. But then through, like you said, what's the word? Just serendipity, whatever, things turned out, I became a jump master. Can you, and I go, that bastard, he lied to me, but he didn't lie to me. He totally bullshitted me. But, switch MOSs, lat moves, etc. And that's hilarious. I love the way they spin. I worked for 6 months in recruiting duty, and all the spins that they would do, it was incredible, man.
They're good. Have you seen, I've only seen them on social media. No, I had an account for a year and I watched some of their videos. They do satire videos, Vet TV.
Oh, I didn't get into that, but I'd like.
They did a whole series, and I only saw the shorts. I didn't watch all of them on Marine recruiters.
Oh, they're hilarious. They're the funniest.
It is hilarious. It makes me want to watch it again.
Some of those stories are great. I mean, this was in Miami in the 90s. We on Fridays, we'd have to get up 04. We did everything everyone else did, and they offered me to be a recruiter, full-fledged recruiter. For the full time, hell no, I was miserable. But we'd get out salsa nights in deltas. It's horrible.
Oh yeah,
the Marine Corps, they'd be having a fit with us if they knew.
All because of a pair of pants. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. When I got to boot camp, they're like, "Oh yeah, I joined for the uniform." I'm like, "What's the uniform?"
You didn't even know the uniform.
I was like, "So."
So you didn't even know the difference between the different branches?
No, I had no idea. Wow. I mean, I assumed the Air Force was the Air Force. I just Marines and Army to me were the same thing. I was so naive. None of it, because my family is not military.
Gotcha.
None of it, right?
Yeah.
I was the first one, so it was great. I don't regret it for a second.
But let's talk about your journey, because and listen, I know you're a humble guy, Teddy, and I know you're going to try to gloss over it, but I'm not going to let you. This is my podcast. No, seriously. But you had an illustrious career. You did what most ANGLICO Marines would never have that career path that you had. And I had a great one too. I had a fantastic one. I had my six MOSs, all of that. You got 6 MOSs too?
Yeah, I felt lucky.
Probably closer to 7 or 8.
I felt
some of them are ASIs or additional duties.
I felt lucky more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there was a lot of, because as I became a mentor and a senior leader,
mm-hmm.
you put people, good leaders, put people in positions to be successful. You can't force and manifest success in someone. So I think because I was always hardworking and I was always trying.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I was just trying to impress my senior leader. Look at this cool antenna I made. Sometimes I really fell in love with teaching.
Yes.
So I always...
Teaching makes you better.
Yeah. I found out, my first training event when I was a private first class, I just graduated comm school. I checked into ANGLICO, and the gunnery sergeant in charge of the comm shop's like, hey, there's these guys deploying to Iraq. You need to teach them this radio. He hands me the radio, PSC-5, and they don't teach that radio at comm school.
Yeah, at the time.
And I was like, I didn't learn this. He goes, not my fucking problem.
Wow.
But he knew what he was doing because he saw me work. He saw us get to the...
He knew that you had the capability.
So he gave me a chance to succeed or fail. And so I stayed up till 2 a.m. reading the manual, memorizing the button trees, created some fake training crypto, and which I had to teach myself that night as well because you don't get taught that. And so I forced myself to know this thing. And then I stood up the next day and started teaching it, and even he was blown away.
Wow.
Now I sucked as a formal instructor at the time because I didn't realize I only had.
You didn't go through the training.
Yeah. And I've been in the military for 3 weeks.
But you knew the job.
And so I fell in love with teaching because when you see people respond to you from instructor to student for that moment, when you see them receive the information and it clicks, that's such a reward, right? And it goes back to like where I found intrinsic value in things. Like I'm probably going to say that word too many times, those couple of words, but it to me it's the centrifuge of everything that I do and I look at. And so I fell in love with that. And then they're like, all right, hey, do you want to go to combat? And we weren't deploying the whole entire unit. So it was like only a select few got picked.
Yeah.
And most of them were guys who had been there for years. And I'm the new kid on the block. There was a few of us fighting for position, right? Because there's a Spartan mentality to be in any Marine unit. And so I got on the deployment, which was great because it was a Special Forces deployment. And lo and behold, I'd later switch to the Army to be in an SF unit in my career. Fast forward 20 years, but didn't know that at the time. And I learned, that's where I learned, if you're gonna do something, do it right, make it look professional, make it look like it's straight, manufactured that way by design. Don't just do it. Now, there's a time and a place when you just need to make it happen, and looks are not everything, right? As Gordon Ramsay would say, flavor is still king. It doesn't matter.
But when you can, do it to the standard.
So, I did Iraq deployment, but I wanted to be more valuable than just being this comm guy, and I didn't have enough time to get to jump school before my first deployment, because there's a long line to get to jump school. Thankfully, you can get to the head of the line if you did more push-ups than the other guys. That was an easy goal to achieve, because I'm like, well, I can make that a reality. And so I think I did a 7-ton licensing course, Humvee licensing, extra Humvee licenses, trailer, and all these endorsements, so I could make myself more valuable. Because I knew, like, there was other guys who were just like me. You're just a radio guy. So that worked out really well for a long period of time in my career. I mean, I was a jump master in a drop zone, driving my own big 7-ton truck out there.
But what you just hit on is so critical, because I hear a lot of this. I hear people go, hey, the advice they give young veterans, or not veterans, young men joining the military, pre-veteran, they go, hey, don't volunteer for anything. And I go, why would you tell him that? Why would you tell him to score for the minimum? I did what you did, the complete opposite. I volunteered for airlifters, airlift loading plan course, Air Force. I volunteered for, I did embarkation. I did like everything that people didn't want to do, just because I wanted to learn that extra skill set, and it helped me later because it got me to jump master. And also, I want to touch on, when you were young, you said you were like a lance corporal giving these classes. Well, people start seeing you in a different light. Because for me, it was being a PMI, so I'm a firearms instructor, but I'm talking to officers. Now they're looking at me a little differently. Like, I'm still just a lance corporal, or a corporal at the time, but these officers are like, well, but Corporal Rivera squared away.
Yeah.
And they saw me in a different light, so now they added more responsibility. Then I became a team chief. Then I got my own team. Then I did this. Then one thing just catapulted my career like that.
Yeah, that really set me up for success later on, because I learning how to publicly speak, I think, is...
Yes.
I mean, my kids do it now. And so I see it manifesting in everything I do in life. My kids, for Christmas, they didn't just hand us a Christmas list. They made us sit in the living room and gave us a PowerPoint presentation on what they wanted, the make, model series of everything they wanted. Wow. Obviously, there was a lot of stretch to what they wanted. But so it helped me out. I mean, so then I did the deployment, came back, went to jump school. I did another MOS SATCOM course. I did some more PME, like enlisted NCO rank courses. Got meritoriously promoted, which was great because I did it as a corporal. The day I got meritoriously promoted was the same day I got my gold wings. So they promoted me. They let me hang 10 toes on the ramp in the aircraft, sent me out, did my gold wings down at the drop zone,
Nice.
which that's another vault story.
Yeah.
And then sent me off to jump master school right away, which was very, very prestigious for a corporal.
You went right after jump school to jump master school?
After I put on my gold wings very quickly, and I was a corporal, and they're like,
how long did it take you to get gold?
ooh, I don't remember the exact dates, but
I mean like how many months? Like after jump school?
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to remember the dates I went to jump school, and then I went to jump master.
Gold to gold.
Yeah, because I went to jump master right when I got gold.
Okay.
I didn't wait.
Yeah. Dude, your career is crazy. That's a fucking phenomenal.
It was faster than most. It wasn't like some of these guys. Some of these guys have heard like they graduate jump master school, and then the Paraloft has like a jump trip.
Yeah.
And it's like 8-10 jumps a day.
Wow.
And so I've heard of guys, I've seen these guys, they're like, oh yeah, I did it in 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, I didn't do that. Yeah. I definitely didn't wait, years. Yeah. Some people get stuck in that holding pattern where they're waiting for years.
Yeah.
So because of that, I've never placed value in looking at a lead sled guy. I don't know any other word for it, so I know that has some negative connotation to it. But some of the greatest guys I've deployed Iraq and Afghanistan with, they were lead sleds. So it doesn't make the man.
Is it still the same though? Because I remember like in the 90s, man, it was if you were a lead sled, you were garbage in ANGLICO.
Yeah.
In this Anglico.
Oh, yeah.
They were like, where's the leads? The lead sleds. Get over here, legs.
You
Get
were,
over here.
yeah, you were still less than human.
Yeah. Okay. I
and
just want to make sure we keep that tradition.
you were still less than human. But if we went like to the range
Yeah.
and we're doing cast or shooting or whatever, then none of that mattered.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? So
yeah, exactly.
we were able to
Good.
we were able to turn it on and off when we needed.
See, I love that we kept some of that. We maintained some of the integrity of our traditions.
Yeah.
Up
Now,
to today.
remember, I haven't been there in 7 years either. So.
Man, I see the look at you as a young new guy. You've surpassed me in so many ways. That's ridiculous. Man.
But there's always been that evolution of decreasing the threshold of what becomes hazing in the military. So I remember when I first checked in to the first unit was Sergeant Major. If you didn't have gold jump wings, you're doing push-ups. Right, and then everyone would get back up. He's like, all right, if you don't have gold wings, you're doing push-ups. And so I didn't have jump, so I'm back down again.
Yeah.
Right, and so there's that. You can't do that anymore.
Got it. Yeah.
So some of that did disappear. But amongst mature circles, the right, I don't want to use the word rite of passage because the military doesn't like that, but that's what it felt like. Some of that still exists.
But we liked that. I thought it was necessary.
If
to a certain extent.
If it's done with taste, is how I like to say it. If it's done out of spite or true embarrassment, then there's no purpose to it.
Ours was never like that.
That's how I look at it.
It was always prestigious.
That's how I look at it.
It was always an honor. It was always like, hey, and at the time as a lance corporal, it was like the salty staff sergeants are waiting for you at the power loft. Like, I can't wait to see those guys.
Yeah, exactly. So there's
I've been waiting for this moment.
Exactly. There's flavors of it that are done tastefully and correctly. I've never experienced any of it done in malice or with bad taste.
Yeah.
So I can't relate to these experiences that people have talked about. I've actually never met anyone who's like, yeah, that was done to me and it was done so horribly and I cried myself to sleep at night thinking about it. I've never met anybody like that. So I'm lucky and blessed in that regard. So yeah, meritorious corporal, jump master, SATCOM radio supervisor at the time, which counted as the PME school at the time because corporal's course wasn't this truly manifested required thing. So they hit that. Got all my licenses. Trying to think, we did all the other schools. I mean, there's so many schools.
Then you switched over to close. You were comms.
Yeah, so I was comms.
Talk about how you switched over from comms and started doing.
And then one day, I think he was a captain in the op shop. He's like, "Hey, we need a guy to go to FO. Do you want to go?" I said, "Yeah, sure." You leave next week. I was like, "Oh, whoops." So I left. Did great. Came back. So now I've had a couple of MOSs under my belt, and I think I'd been home for only like 2 months, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to go to JTAC course or TACP course, as the Marine Corps calls it? Do you want to go to TACP course?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." I wasn't even. I think again, people put me in a position to be successful or fail, and in between that, because I skipped over a bunch, I did Hearst Master and a bunch of other schools, live tissue courses, all these other courses. To me, they're just skill set courses, not truly MOS courses. But even then, what?
But Hearst is great.
Hearst is great.
Hearst is great.
I mean, that's life skills.
Yeah.
Rope. I use that all the time. And I went to TACP course, and they're like, "Oh, you got to do this refresher on MarineNet," because MCIs were done at the point. The red books, remember those? They got rid of those.
That's all I remember. You act like I have an alternative other than those little red books.
Yeah, they got rid of the red books and we went digital.
Yeah.
That made it more difficult because you had to use your ID card to log in.
Okay.
You couldn't just log in at home
Yeah.
without a CAC reader. And
Gotcha. The whole 9 yards, yeah.
so it made it more difficult, but I get it. Whatever, that's the direction it went. I wasn't reluctant to any of those kinds of changes, but I did all these primer courses and went to TACP course. Did wonderful things there. The guy, the only enlisted instructor I had at the time, I still stay in touch with him today. He still works for the government. He retired from the Marine Corps, but he still is a government guy, and he works for a special organization, so I won't name drop or anything like that. but he still works in the JTAC world. So I see him every once in a while on the road. Great guy. I mean, he went the extra mile with teaching me, right? Like, I just remember, like, even graduating TAC-P course, my final evaluation was nighttime. We're on an island in North Carolina. And I think I had one of those little diamond-shaped pen lights hanging from my kit.
Yeah, I know those.
And I would turn that on, look at my map, and do my work. And then he's like, he takes all my stuff and just throws it off the tower. We were on those big metal towers. Throws it off the tower. He's like, now do it.
Wow.
And I said, okay, I'm going to go downstairs and get my stuff. He's like, no, now do it. And he forced me to use my brain, which, that's not a thing. I mean, and if I failed it, I could have appealed it, but he knew I wouldn't, right? Because we had built some trust and rapport at that point.
He was just trying to make you better.
Yeah, exactly. And he hit, one of his things was,
He saw promise, and he was like, I'm going to exploit this. Yeah.
And one of those things, he's like, hey, you're also not a traditional fires guy, you're a comm guy. He goes, enlisted guys, at this point in the JTAC world, enlisted guys already had a target on their back for this. Why are we letting you do this, was the mantra from the big box perspective. And then not only that, you're just this comm guy that came from wherever. Like, what are you doing? And so I did have a bigger target on my back, I realized later on. And it was fun, because it just presents more challenges and unique obstacles. So, at this point, I've also done like 4 deployments, I think, overseas. And then I got an opportunity to deploy as a team leader. I was an E5, and I got to deploy as a team leader and a JTAC in charge of a team with 2nd ANGLICO from North Carolina. That was fun, because I got really cool, unique missions out of that. Counter narcotics work. I learned stuff the DEA is doing in different programs. Then we got to do some more task force related events, and then I got to experience the conventional Marine infantry at the same time, which, again, we talked about this before, but man, I take my hats off to those guys, because it's a bunch of 18 to 23-year-olds, and they're doing God's work more than anyone else is.
I think a lot of people don't realize that, because working at SOCOM, I would try to explain it. I go, man, when we would go on a mission, we had so much support. They cordoned off the area. It almost felt like too easy. When these guys go in Fallujah, they're kicking doors and they have no clue. There's no intel.
No.
They don't get no report.
Nope.
They're going in freaking blind for the first time, and whatever happens, they just got to deal with it. That's why I go like, SOCOM, and you guys, yes, it's dangerous, but my hats are off to the grunts on the ground.
Yeah, because from the special operations perspective, it's easier to plan, deliberately rehearse, and even rehearse deliberately for unplanned events, because you have the resources available, whereas
Budget.
John Q. Public Infantry Unit has no choice but to go into unknown territory to do unknown things. You look at the infantry model, their reaction drills are predicated upon doing a presence patrol just around their patrol base, not necessarily a deliberate mission with an end state, right? And so,
Exactly, yeah.
You're not going to find a ODA team just doing a patrol around their patrol base.
Never. It'll be a calculated mission. They'll know the exact time. They'll have all the details.
Yeah.
Might not work out that way, but they'll have it very close to the way it's going to be when they actually do it.
Yeah. So it's so I did a few more deployments. Then getting promoted to staff NCO, started taking leadership roles over multiple teams, and I did another JTAC instructor upgrade. I did a JTAC evaluator upgrade. At this point, I kind of was done with schools. I had free fall offered to me.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
And I turned it down because I said, if I'm going to go skydiving, I'm gonna do it in the civilian capacity.
Yeah.
I
That's
don't.
when it's fun.
I don't regret it either, right? Because I was already a jump master at this point for 10 years,
Okay.
and I had a Marine die on a static line jump operation. We had a Marine die, and I saw the investigative procedure that was, and at this point I've got like a little buyer's remorse in being a jump master, because I realized we're more the focal point for being who to blame. And I saw the same thing in the Hearst master world. And then even like if you really break down the JTAC world, like we do great stuff, but you're also the first person they're going to blame when it goes wrong. I've been investigated several times for
Absolutely, yeah.
not because I did anything wrong, because sometimes bad things happen, and we have to figure out
outside of your control.
Yeah, we have to figure that out. And I think because of the amount of investigations I worked in, I also had some opportunities to do some independent contract work for the Department of Justice with investigating war crimes. That's a whole nother story.
Wow. That's a whole nother podcast. You're coming back.
Yeah. I don't even know if we can talk about half the things on that one. But, yeah, and so I had the deployment bug for quite some time. I tried to stay overseas as much as possible. Then I got a family, kids, married, and deployed once. That started to create bad things in my personal life, and so deployed again to fix it, right? Because that's what we do. We don't know how to fix it, so we do something
Run away.
else. Yeah, that's what it was fundamentally.
It is, yeah.
And so I earned my divorce coming back, and then I switched into Marine Reserve Unit in Alabama, 3rd Force Recon, and I did a few years there. That was fun.
How was that? Talk a little bit about that.
It was eye-opening that, you look at the active Anglicos, you look at the reserve Anglicos, and you realize how blessed that unit and that community is. And then you look at reserve recon, and it's the epitome of we don't have enough resources to do what we're chartered to do. And I had never experienced that in my career. And so there was some challenges. I was like, all right, well, this is easy. The Marine Corps says we need to do X, Y, and Z. Here's how you do it. Here's how you do it on a budget. And you still get told, nah, we're not doing that.
Wow. Oh, that's frustrating.
And it wasn't bureaucratic. It was just there's not enough resources to do that.
Wow.
And I think because of that, I saw some dated capability or capacity because I had deployed so many times in recent and relevant theaters. And, I didn't just do combat overseas tours. I spent a lot of time in Jamaica, Belize. We did the Caribbean. I've done a bunch of European stuff. We look at all of those. Pick your flavor of acronym. The acronym of what those overseas things, training operations were, they change all the time.
All the time.
So I'm not going to pick any acronym out of my hat here, but the exposure I got to everything that's going on in the world, I got to deploy to almost all the hemispheres. Never did Asia. Well, I did Okinawa, but that's not a training thing. And the point I'm making is when I got to a unit that was underutilized and deprived of these resources, it was very, very interesting and eye-opening for me to go. These guys need to find a way to either evolve or they're very quickly going to go, we don't need you anymore, and have the flag rolled up. So I don't know what will or will not become of that, because at that time in my life, I was also, again, post-divorce, trying to fix my personal life. Every time I was in Anglico, I was giving too much of myself to going overseas and doing work, and I was so committed that finally now in a unit that I'm not having these abundant resources to do whatever I want, do as many schools as I want, do as many training events as I want. Sometimes I was hitting 3 or 4 countries in a year just for training stuff. Couldn't do that anymore, so I had to focus on me, which was good. So as much as I, my Eagle Globe and Anchor brain didn't like what I was doing at Force Recon, I was forced to use my Teddy Pernal brain and start fixing those things that I had caused damage on, which was not the design or intention of switching, but it worked out. And I had some senior Force Recon leadership that was in Anglico at the time that convinced me to take those steps for those reasons. I think those guys saw that was going to be the result, now looking back.
Yeah.
And they didn't tell it to me because they knew that wouldn't be a good sales pitch. So it worked out really great. And then I because of the geography of that unit, I also got more networking in the Panhandle and the Gulf side of Southeast USA, and I met some guys that were in the Army Special Forces National Guard unit, and they convinced me, like, hey, we need JTAC instructors and evaluators really bad. And I really fell in love with that. I hated doing jump master work because of all the ass pain that goes into planning those things. I used to say it's 50 hours of work for 5 minutes of glory.
Yeah.
Paying them. So I was like, it didn't bring me value anymore. Hearst Master was still kind of valuable, but the problem with Hearst Master work, we did some VBSS. We had a helicopter crash in the Bahamas. Seeing investigations come from that, and then seeing how they protect air crews and blame ground guys because it's an easy scapegoat. With that said, I was so over all of these different masters of badges to wear that I was like, okay, JTAC's not bad. I'll focus on that. And this Army National Guard, they have multiple special forces units, and they're like, so I said, all right, I don't know what it took to cross deck from Marines to Army, so I said, yeah, why not? You got to go through MEPS again, like an 18-year-old.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So I had to go through MEPS again. I wasn't afraid of that.
Duck walk.
Yeah, the whole 9 yards. Yeah.
Cough.
I did all of it. And if you ever want to feel old, take all your clothes off, get in a room with other 18-year-old men. I don't care how much in shape you are. My skin looked old when I was looking at these guys.
There's like dust coming off.
But it was interesting because I remember, it brings me nostalgia. I remember my own MEPS experience, talking to a few guys here and there, and I didn't know anything, and those guys gave me little nuggets of information and wisdom. And now I had all these guys asking me a bunch of questions.
And you have all the answers. Right?
And I'm trying not to give them an answer, more so than do what leadership did for me, is give them enough information to go research the right answer. Now, if it's just a unit question, some things I just don't know. But that was a rewarding 2-day experience in and of itself. Only to find out the Army's not good at record keeping and management. I mean, at this point in my life, I'm getting close to 2 decades in, and after it was all said and done, I'm sworn in, and now I'm in this Army SF unit, and they're like, I show up day one, they're like, you have 0 years time in service. I was like, no, we're gonna have a problem if I'm at 0.
Yeah. That's insane.
So it took me the better part of 2 years to get everything cleaned up and really become, ready and relevant again, record keeping wise. And I did a few more schools to SOCOM Army bless off my instructor and everything, because everything Marines doesn't translate to Army. And so I had to, clean that stuff up. And then I did the Warrant Officer program, which I think the Warrant Officer program, well, 2 things. One, I think the National Guard Reserve programs are the best kept secret. Everyone I talk to that's getting off active duty, go.
Yeah.
Go. Because
one of my biggest regrets.
It is, why go cold turkey from the health insurance? That's like step 1. You got kids, why go cold turkey from the health insurance? Number 2, it creates a network of like-minded and relevant people, right? The stuff we've been talking about. Okay, why would you say no to that? Why would you not want to extend your fraternity, brotherhood, sisterhood, community to something more regionally focused, right? The second you walk out of your active duty unit, no one's calling you for help. And if you call them, they only know their Jacksonville, North Carolina zip code. That's their sphere of influence. But if you're home, right, coming home to South Florida, and you're working with a reserve ANGLICO unit, everyone there, their sphere of influence is that 250-mile radius. And so it's why would you turn that down? So I tell everyone, that's like 2 things. Now I've also learned this Warrant Officer program in the Army National Guard. That's another best kept secret, because they have 3 versions. The first version that I selected was the one that's helpful for business guys. You just do the standard drilling model of reserve National Guardsmen, where you go once a month, Friday through Sunday, do that for 6 months. Then you do a 2-week consolidated effort, and boom, you're good.
That's a sat year right there.
Yeah, and now you're promoted.
Wow. And
they have another accelerated program where active duty guys want to just get through fast, so there's no time off. It's 12-hour academic days, because it's 90% academics. And if you're not academically sound, I wouldn't do the fast, rapid. I think they call it the accelerated version. And then there's the standard 6-week, 8-week, whatever it is, Fort Rucker, Alabama version, that the run-of-the-mill warrant officer goes to. The Army's such a big machine. There's a learning curve for me still. The Marine Corps, it's awesome when you have those small world moments, but it's always technically a small world, and it's easy to find tactical level problem, find the headquarters authored solution. It's a very quick path to find that answer. The Army is so big and diverse and massive that you got to submit a form just to get your question to the right person.
Wow.
So it slows down some of those things, but the advantage of the Army is they don't let that hinder training and operations. Even when I was working through all my admin problems when I was still enlisted, still going on cash trips, still training, still hitting everything, right? Still shooting. So it was good to see that the Army recognizes its own bottlenecked approach to solving some of the administrative record keeping challenges. I don't want to call them problems because I think they just are what they are. They're always going to exist. So for that reason, the unit's commander is given the discretion to still take all his troops and go do his stuff, go do his business.
Now, originally this podcast is mostly for veteran businesses, et cetera, but this is important information too, because really it's for any veteran transitioning from the military. That's a transition just because they go into reserve, but they don't know that. If they knew that, so that also needs to be here. For example, I wish I knew half of the stuff that you just told me. My career would have been different afterwards. I would have made different choices.
I'm not anything special. I'm just this kid that was on a bus stop when I joined the Marine Corps. Like what? I didn't do anything. And I realized, maybe because I'm always working and I'm always, shake the hand of everyone you meet, be a decent human being, help people. I think going back to the value we can mutually provide each other is what helps build these relationships and helps people. I've had people call me all the time. Hey, can you get so-and-so a job? I'm like, I'll look. Can't promise anyone.
Of course not.
I'll look, but we've got the right access to the right connections that, okay, I have to pay tribute to guys like you, right? When I was there, I remember, who's that Staff Sergeant Rivera guy? That guy looks like the Incredible Hulk. Everyone's scared of him.
A lot bigger.
Everyone's scared of him. Then there's the war stories. I won't break them out of the vault. Then there's the war stories of he did what? Oh my goodness. And then, but what I saw in front of me, the generation of staff NCOs I saw in front of me. One of the things I stood on. Don't be afraid of anyone. So a lot of people in the military get scared of the next rank up. I never was. So I think that helped. But I was never afraid to talk to anyone, whether you're the janitor or the CEO or the private or the general. But I saw these giants of men in front of me, right? And I considered you amongst them. And I saw these footprints that you guys were walking, and whether some of the war stories had a fishing story conundrum tied to it or they were completely factual and accurate, it didn't matter to me. What mattered to me is there was a community of, freedom fighters, guys who delivered American patriotism across the planet going in front of me. And I was fortunate enough to be able to walk right behind you guys. And there's a lot of you guys, right? Chief Warrant Officer Ken McKelton, Andy Fernandez, JJ, Gonzo, a lot of guys. And I was like, I'm blessed if I have an opportunity to even be a fraction of what they were. And so I mentioned this to you earlier when we were talking on the phone. A lot of guys look at their current situation and go, well, where's the guy? What happened? Someone used to take care of me here. Someone made sure that we always had what we needed. They told, bad decisions to the leadership, no. Whether officer or enlisted, I'm not going to pick on that debate. And I would tell guys what I learned is like, well, when you're the guy in that position, it's not the rank, it's are you in the position to be the one who tells the guy no? And if you are, then you have the responsibility and the obligation to be the leader. And so I always try to find that position, from the day I was a Lance Corporal till now. If I can help people out by saying no, I will. Because that's, I think, one of the hardest challenges a lot of military guys have, saying no. I've seen good senior enlisted leaders, guys I consider brothers, make very, very bad decisions and lose the rapport and the trust of their NCOs below them because they're afraid to say no. I've had guys work for other staff NCOs who I consider brothers, and I've had their own Marines call me from overseas 2 or 3 days after a big traumatic incident, gunfight, whatever, and say, hey, your words were echoing in my head during this moment. And that was one of the greatest rewards I've ever had. And that's why I pay tribute to the guys who came before me, because I couldn't do it without them. And that tradition, that passing it on, the Marine Corps is, I think, the best at that. But
and especially ANGLICO. I think ANGLICO is really good at that.
Yeah, I don't think there's not too many organizations that can rival ANGLICO in terms of its generational camaraderie. I've met some guys from some pretty elite places, and I say, hey, you see the younger guys doing X, Y, and Z. What do you think? They're like, it's not my unit anymore.
Wow.
And I go, that response doesn't resonate with me.
No, not at all. I hear ANGLICO, I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
I want to hear every detail. Like this afternoon, I want to hear everything. It feels so great to hear where we're at now. And you talk about us paving the way, but you've surpassed us, and you've created a whole new way for other ones.
Yeah, I guess it depends on who's evaluating it. I've got my own series of enemies, too.
Yeah, we all do.
I don't have my sanctuary built quite like you do. I will one day. Right now, we're I'm focusing on the kids and creating their path for their future.
Yeah.
Right, giving them the path.
And that's so important. You mentioned that real quick, but that is so critical. And the family first thing. I always thought, well, no, service first, because that is protecting my family. I had a crazy way of looking at things. I'm like, I got to deploy because I want to go to war so that my kids never have to. Like all that romanticized mindset, and then the reality is, man, I lost my son. I was gone for 5 years in Iraq. When I left to Iraq, my son was 5 years old, and I remember the last thing he told me at the ANGLICO parking lot when I tried to explain to him what I do. And without telling him, I say, all right, son, bye. He's 5 years old. He waves at me and goes, Dad, drop lots of bombs on the bad guys. Because that's how I was trying to explain to him. And I remember being sad, and when he said that, I smiled. And I was like, that's right. But he turned around. Of course, I got sad, but then I was in the mindset to go.
Yeah, family first. But the problem is, in today's culture, in America anyways, at least my own personal experience and observation is family is also the most challenging.
Yeah.
It's not easy. I mean, I still have fractured or damaged relationships with family members that sometimes I can't foresee that I'll ever overcome all of them. And so there's a little bit of, bad taste in my own mouth knowing, okay, well, do I have to live with that? Do I ever have to address it? Can I compartmentalize it and move on it later? I don't know. I don't know the right answer. I'm not going to pretend to be a therapist. I let my therapist pretend to be a therapist. Hopefully, not pretend. So it's family first, and it's challenging because that's also like that can also be the catalyst of a lot of issues that we talk about trying to help guys out, and sometimes it's not always a therapist that needs to be there to solve the problem for a guy either. That was my knee cracking right there. These knees get old, and so if I lose that, maybe then it's time to hang it up. But yeah. So no, this was fun. I appreciate it.
Excellent, brother. Thank you for being here.
I want to come back. Let's do summertime. I'll be back South
summertime,
Florida.
and we'll do an update and find out what's going on with the nonprofits and the businesses.
Yeah.
So, folks, we're going to end it here today. Welcome to the Warfighter Sanctuary. Remember to subscribe, like, share. I'm new at this, so I'm still learning how to say this. And
better than me.
Thanks so much for attending this meeting, and we'll see you next time at the Warfighter Sanctuary.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you, brother.
That wraps up another episode of Warfighter Sanctuary. Thank you for listening. For more information on Vetronet and the businesses featured in this podcast, be sure to check out our website at vetronet.com. That's www.Victor Echo Tango Romeo Echo November Echo Tango.com. Become a Patreon subscriber and get VIP access to the Blue Falcon Show, where we continue the interview with their unfiltered thoughts on a range of topics. Some serious, some trivial, always entertaining. Like and follow our Facebook page to join the community at facebook.com/groups/Vetronet. Intro music provided by Army veteran Sabo of NSA Entertainment. Post-show music provided by Marine veteran Justin Martin of JLM Entertainment. Voiceover provided by Marine veteran Mark Denstead of voicedbymark.com. Until next time, remember, hiring a veteran is thanking a veteran. Thank you for your support.